This is a summary of a few lessons. So basically, this is going to be the summary video for the Secrets of the Vine study that we did. Yes, this thing. So we went through and did a book study, but not the way we don't just go through and do like that's not what it's. But anyway, okay, listen. Use this as a rough guide. Got the workbook, kind of worked through it. The reason we did this is because, and I mentioned this before, but went through that reading the book, The Secrets of the Vine, quite a while ago in a men's group, I think, if I remember correctly. But it's something that stuck with me because it's really good way to focus on Jesus' last teaching to his disciples. And kind of a big deal in the way he presented things and how matter of fact he was with stuff, how real he was with some things. Didn't really talk, just kind of important, big deal. Something that we gloss over, it was on the way to, between the Last Supper and on the way to where he was betrayed. And I think we don't spend enough time looking at what he meant there. And in general, the red letters in Scripture we don't spend as much time on. We focus more on the 3 days at the end, not the 3 years. I'm not going to. Okay. Anyway, Secrets of the Vine. That's a whole other thing that I'll get into on a different video. But anyway, so I had a video, I think, from week 1, week 2, and then kind of got busy, but also because it was more of a book study, you can get this book. This is a workbook. I don't have the book, but we had the book, and we've been passing this around to people to read the book itself. Here's the thing. Multiple people liked reading the book because the book kind of told you. It kind of explained what abiding was and what discipline was and those kind of things. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But that's not what this group is. Okay? So that's why I don't like doing book studies. Not saying that there's not a place for those. Absolutely there is. Like, the reason we did this book study, the reason we sort of kind of loosely did this book study was because it impacted me from a men's group that we did the actual study, read the book. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But I don't want to spend time. I don't feel that we should spend time in being real walking through a book. You should spend time going through a book and reading it to help you. But that's not what this is, right? That if we start doing that, then we're going to fall back into doing what everybody else does. And that's not the point of this. This is not that. So some people probably think, oh my gosh, I don't understand why you're... That's why. That's why I don't like book studies. For this group. Let me clarify. I'm not saying book studies are bad. I've learned a ton from those. But I also didn't learn a lot from those. Because that's one person's opinion and you kind of shut off your brain and that's not good. So it's good to have that information, but you still have to go to the next step and figure out what you're going to do with it and how you're going to apply it. And we shut off our brains when we watch videos. Hopefully you're not shutting off your brain watching the videos that I do. But anyway, we shut off our brains when we watch videos or when we read books. And we need to do the opposite. And not because I want that, because Scripture kind of shows that. There's a reason Jesus asked all the questions. He wants you to think. Okay. So, anyway. Sorry, got on a little tangent there. Summary. This is good stuff. Workbook. It's like $7.99 is what it says here. But get this. Walk through it. I will tell you that people in the group did not like it. And when I say that, I mean, they didn't like having to answer the questions. Again, we're not used to doing that. There are some things here that are fill in the blank. We did really good at the fill in the blank stuff. But when it came to, think of a time in your life that blank. Not so much. Not so much. That's hard to do that. So this is a a workbook, right? You can get the Secrets of the Mind book if you don't want to do any work. And you could read that and that'll help you. Again, no judgment here. I'm just, go to whatever you want to do. But you get what you put in. You get out what you put in. But anyway, yeah, this workbook, the nice thing about the workbook, as we went through it, is it pointed us to scripture. We'd go read that scripture, and then we talk about it. So, and then what we would do is we'd take it as discussion points or some talking points and things like that. So we didn't go step by step through this book. If you were there, you know that. If you weren't, it's important to know that. Kind of like hit the big topics. Like, what did you struggle with? What were your questions? And that's what we talked about in the group. So anyway, really good book. I'm not dumping on the book itself at all, or the workbook. It's just explaining stuff. So the biggest issue that we had in the group, and that we have, I think, as people in general, is the discipline side of things. We talked through that for weeks, and discipline. There's discipline and pruning, and then there were times when we would try to apply discipline to things that weren't discipline, and then we try to we just wanted it to be easy. I don't know if I'm overstating it, but you just want to be like, well, I want to know what it is. I want it to be like just eat, and it's not always easy. Which is why there are studies like this. This is why this is put together. If this was easy, there wouldn't be a whole book about it. But the discipline and the pruning and what the difference is there and how to identify that. And I want to say it took us 3 weeks to just get through that concept. And nobody likes discipline. And the concept of discipline being love, really, really hard for us as humans to understand. Even those that are parents in there that were parents in the room had a hard time, because that's one of those like, okay, if you love your kids, are you going to let them touch the hot stove more than once? Or are you going to, we didn't actually talk about that. I'm just trying to give you an example. But, what is discipline? Do you let them do whatever they want? So even going from the parents' perspective, we struggled. We still struggled pretty mightily with it. But after the 2 or 3 weeks, I don't want to say 3 weeks, 3 weeks of working through that, and then in the book, in the workbook, there's a chart that kind of explains it. The funny thing is, we were talking about it all before we got to the chart. And then we got to the chart, and then what we did is we got to that, and it explains pruning and discipline and how to identify it. Then we had a hard time coming up with, and I'm sure a number of reasons I don't want, but coming up with examples. We did a lot of, well, I read this over here, or this person had this. But when it came to us coming up with examples of discipline in our own lives, or close to us, we struggled mightily. Okay, just saying we struggled mightily. Being real, and I think ultimately we ended up with 2 or 3 examples that were real examples. There's a lot of this person, trying to come up with an analogy. No, okay, no, that doesn't help us. And we got to break that mold. Okay, we can't continue to be like, well, this person over here, or this, or I read this, or this is in the paper, or this book said this. No, this is about you. If you're not going to go on that journey with yourself, this doesn't help you. Not in the way that it should, right? Again, not typical Bible study, life study, your life. So even if there were people in the group that didn't feel comfortable in the group talking about it, or couldn't come up with something, I implore you, I encourage you, whatever you want to say there, to sit with that and really, really think about times in your life where there was discipline or pruning. And again, you have to go through the book and understand what all that means. Beforehand, people in the group that I'm talking to know what that means. But you really have to You really have to get that. It's really important. And it's got to be real to you. So anyway, we had 2 or 3 examples, and then we tested those examples against that chart, and it made a lot more sense. It took us 3 weeks to get there. It was, and it was funny because we would come in and start working on a different section, or try to start working on a different section, and be like, somebody would be like, well, I have a question, but I'm not going to ask it. Or mention something. I was like, what? That's what we're here for. What? It's like week 50. Why are you doing that to me? What's the question? What are you struggling with? That's why we're here. And it was just interesting because it was like, oh, well, you've already been through this with the book. Another reason I don't like book studies. Well, you've already been over that. Oh, so that means we know it. No. It doesn't mean that. If you don't understand it, you don't understand it. I don't care if you read the same thing 12 times. Be real. Ask the questions. If you're struggling, you're struggling. And I promise you, if you're struggling, someone else is struggling with the same thing. And I see it all the time in the group, all the time. So I was like, no, ask your question. And it was like going, like, I'm just struggling with the discipline thing. I'm like, you and everybody else in the group, let's go back and talk about that. And that's what we did. So yeah, that's, loosely based on the book, but the book was really good at pointing us to scripture and doing that kind of thing. And yeah, some people went through and answered all the questions, the best that they could, and they're going to get the most out of it. Others maybe not so much. They're still going to get something out. They still got something out of it, I promise you. But, I don't know. A lot of personal reflection. That's really hard for us to do. So the workbook kind of forced that. But we didn't talk about those kind of things. If somebody wanted to share, they did. And we actually shared more, to be fair. I don't want to sound like I'm beating people up here, because I'm really not. I'm being real and saying that different people are in different areas, and it's important to know that. That's okay. So if it comes off not like that, I apologize. But we had some really good. We shared some things in there that I didn't expect. There were certain questions that I'd be like, yeah, we're not going to talk about that. Like when it came up with scoring yourself. People, like half the room shared their scores. I didn't expect that. I was going to flow through and we talked about that. So I don't want you to think, if you weren't there, I don't want you to think that we weren't sharing that stuff. We shared more than I thought we would. So again, I want you to know, if you weren't in that room, that there are different levels, and whatever people were comfortable with is what they did. But we shared some stuff. Like, we talked about some stuff. So I don't want to misrepresent that, but I'm here. I can't, talk about that stuff. Okay. So discipline, discipline, and well, you know what? You kind of study it for yourself and see what it means. If you weren't there. But yes, pruning, discipline, big, huge, most of the time spent on that 3 weeks. Rightfully so. Again, we talk about things that matter. And when you talk about things that matter, it takes a while to work through them. Not talking about the weather. Okay. So, we completed the book study. I gotta look at this. Because it's been a couple weeks. Sorry. I'm looking at... Hold on. I have some answers here that I think are things that I would like to share with you, but I need to. Okay. So in week 4, by the way, it took us 7 weeks to get through 4 weeks of the book. You've already, know why, because I already explained it. Because we didn't go by the book and say it has to be. Okay, you get it. I don't need to go through that again. Sorry. I'm rambling. All right. So in week 4, this is the question. And it says, think of a time when you felt especially near to God. List 3 words that describe how that felt. And week 4 was talking about abiding. Now, abiding, we spent like one session, one meeting. Okay? But what I do want to share with you is the answers that we got from that one. Think of a time when you felt especially near to God. List 3 words that describe how that felt. I'm going to list the words that everybody kind of came up with. So, peaceful. By the way, every person that answered, 3 of them, if they had 3 words, peace was always with everybody a word that they used to describe it. Peace was consistent across the board. Sense of anticipation, relief, which is kind of interesting. We went through and explored that. Assurance, contentment, which people think is a bad word. The world thinks is a bad word. It's really not. It took me a long time to figure that out. There's I could do a whole video on that alone. Freedom and empowerment. Those are so there were 3 answers. There were 8 people in the group probably that day, something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ones, but very closely tied. And peace was in all of them. So that just gives you an idea of there's certainly some, what's the word? It's the same stuff that people feel. They might describe it differently, but it's the same stuff. And some of it's hard. Like freedom is hard to, contentment and those things, like just, but it's so interesting that everybody's like, yeah, I can't really explain. But peace was the one that everybody could like easily do. And like a couple of the other ones was like, I don't know, like peace is kind of like everything. But with it was interesting. So, and you just look at that and you go, well, why don't we do that more? Because we're human. But that was about abiding. So, walked through the different lessons and things like that. And it just was a really good study. If you weren't there through it, just get this workbook will kind of work you through some stuff. And, if you answer the questions that it's asking, you're going to learn a lot more than just reading the book. You can do this separately. They do kind of reference the book. Do you? You can do one or the other or both. Some people in the group have said the book was so much better. Yeah, because you didn't have to answer your own personal stuff in the book. Sorry, did I say that out loud? That was my outside voice. Anyway, do one or the other or both. Highly recommended. So again, I'm not knocking book studies or the resources that are out there. A lot of my growth came from doing those. It's just that that's not what being real is. And if it starts becoming that, then it's just like a lot of other stuff out there. And I don't know. I just don't feel that's the calling. So this one's done. We're moving into a different topic, but a huge one, where we're going to talk about all the different religions out there, non-Christian, Christian, and doing it from a neutral standpoint, right? Talking facts and working through those things, not coming in with a preconceived notion and we've come a long way there. We have broken down a lot of walls. It's been a year, and I'm going to do another video for the year in review kind of thing. But we wouldn't have been as ready for this before. But now I'm really looking forward to it and going in open and having us have that understanding. Anyway, thanks for watching. Keep being real.